Saturday, or a little past that if you're in parts of Australia or Japan. We're going to do a little bit of different again, because I'm going to be doing a presentation. I've not done very many PowerPoint-ish presentations, and my preference is using Keynote on, which is Mac's equivalent to that. And I'm going to be roaming through that pretty quickly. I've got a fairly long session, but what as the announcement said, we're going to be talking about smoothness or smooth dancing. In reality, it's about smooth calling so that dancers can dance smoothly. Correct. And the things that we have to do and the things that go into that. If I were to teach you everything that I know about making that happen, we'd have to include next Saturday and all the time in between. There's an awful lot of information. So the goal here today is to make the newer callers, and when I say newer callers, I'm thinking that when I've been calling 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 years, I wasn't aware that all these different ingredients existed in making smooth dancing, or why we cared about smooth dancing. Right. And then it was a big problem of trying to figure out how to accomplish all the things that make it happen. Today, I'm trying to make you aware of all the things that go into it, but not at a speed where you can absorb any of these, where you can use any of these, just to make you aware that these are things that are out there and you should work on slowly. And for you experienced callers, some of you may not have cleared up all the options of all the parts of this, and may be reminded, oh, I should work on that too. And I'm going to go through it quickly for one of the reasons we try to keep the presentations on this short so we can open it for discussion. And I'm sure there will be some discussion. Like, how do I do that? Or what did you mean by that? Or you got to be kidding, or what have you. But anyway, with that in mind, oh, and people are going to say, can I have a copy of the PowerPoint presentation? And I'm going to say, I got you one better. I've got a 4, 5, 6 page handout that I will post, if I can figure out how to post, that has a lot more detail. That the presentation is mostly just bullet points, and the explanations that I will give with it are on the handout. And I will try to get that posted soon after we do this. Anyway, with that in mind, I'm going to see if I can share my screen.
Oh, yeah.
And it looks like I can, but it's not quite what I want yet. And that should, no.
Well, I just saw PowerPoint.
That's what I want.
Well, Don's figuring that out. I just to note that I have muted a whole bunch of people in an attempt to figure out who that was talking in the background. Feel free to unmute yourselves if you want to talk, but do it consciously. Thank you.
So I noticed that while I have this slideshow of the thing up, I don't have a cursor on the screen, so I can't get to see more of your faces. I'll try and go, as I say, I'll try and go through this quickly, and without being able to see too many of you who are here. Interrupt if you want, but remember, we're going to do discussion later. So we're talking about smooth dancing, and oh, the usual, here we go. Let's get started. Ta-da. Smooth dancing. These are the things we're going to talk about. What it is, Why do we care? What are the components that make up smooth dancing? As we said in the teaser, is not just body flow. And how do we achieve it? So let's start with smooth dancing. What is it? Dancing, it's dancing, it's not marching. It's having the dancers move from call to call to call smoothly. It's smooth transitions from one call to the next. The way I like to think about it is if you were a non-square dancer, or maybe had a few ideas, or were just know the basics of lesson one, and you were to watch somebody dancing mainstream or advanced or challenged, doesn't matter what level this is at, you wouldn't be able to tell where one call starts and the next stops. It'd sort of be a total kaleidoscope of things. There's just a constant movement, one call to the next, and if you don't know what the different calls are, there'd be no way you would guess this. And especially if you're looking at this with the sound turned off and just looking at the movement. Why do we care? Well, dancing smoothly is more enjoyable, believe it or not. It's much less tiring. It actually makes the dancing easier. You can, as a caller, you can give more variety, and some of it even getting into more difficult stuff because the smoothness of it just helps the dancers glide through it. And of course, there are exceptions. Teaching, you might not want to be smooth. Workshopping, gimmicks, challenge. So let's continue on and talk about the components of smooth dancing. We all know and think about body flow, but timing has a very big part of smooth dancing, and hand availability, and tempo, and phrasing, and the sound system. If they can't hear you, they can't dance smoothly. If they can't understand you, they can't dance smoothly. The sound being the sound system in the hall, etc. And they've got to know the calls that you're calling. You can't call A1 calls at a plus dance, or they've got to be able to dance the dances fairly easily too. Their ability has to be up to the degree of difficulty that you're allowing. And there's also problems that could occur, like there was a slippery floor or a late night last night, like, I don't know, the Super Bowl, or the moon is full. And I don't think that has as much to do with it, but some people like to think it does. So let's look at these components. Body flow. And I'm looking at these quickly. But body flow is, and as I said, each of these subjects here could take a full 2 evenings of it, but we're just looking and making you aware of stuff. Body flow is the movement of the dancers from one position to the next, and you know where they are and where they're going to and whether they can get there smoothly. Some towels are just awkward in themselves. You can't get there from here without it being awkward. And I can't think of too many, but one example is swap around on the A1 list. I remember being at a workshop many, many, many years ago, even before there were lists, and the caller was workshopping swap around. And I was in the place where I had to flip to the right. And I'm just standing there facing couples and I'm saying, he's going to call that call now. I'm mentally prepared. He called it. And I still had to hesitate. It's an awkward call. There are other calls that I didn't put in here that have things like built-in overflow, like motivate on the A2 list. But anyway, there are awkward sequences, and this is what we frequently think of with body flow. And some of the typical ones are bend the line to a flutter wheel. This is from a right-hand two-face line, a one-face line, but there are exceptions, of course. A left-hand two-face line to a flutter wheel is very nice, but that's a typical example. Another one is, centers in instead of cast off 3/4, bend the line. It's a very awkward sequence. You're going this way, you're going that way. And there are other examples, but I'm just trying to give you others. There are borderline sequences that some people think, oh, those are awkward, I'd never call them. And other people call them all the time, and dancers get used to them. And use your judgment. An example of that, walk and dodge partner trade. A lot of people think that the woman bouncing over and bouncing back is awkward. Use your judgment. Star through and veer to the left or veer to the right. Use your judgment. Most people say that's horrible. I've danced it just to feel what it feels like. And if you're expecting it, it's not so bad. Sometimes you just need it for your choreography. And let me tell my watch to stop bothering me. Good, sorry about that. There's position and offset, part of body flow. For instance, if I have a left-handed two-face line and I call tag the line, people have to sort of back up to do it. If it's a right hand, right shoulders in the middle, tag the line is very nice. If it's one left and one right, like lines facing out, it's not so bad. If there's a left-handed shoulders in the middle, like a two-face line, the offset is terrible and it makes it for bad body flow. And then there are things like overflow, too much of a good thing. An example, let's say I did a spin the top followed by a center's trade. Everybody agrees that arm turn half is fine. Some people think that an arm turn, a full turn is not okay. I do. I don't mind calling swing through center's trade. But going 1 1/4, centers going 3/4 when they finish the top, spinning the top and then doing a center's trade on top of that, that's overflow. And there are cases of people overflowing, and there are cases of couples overflowing, like couples circulate and wheel and deal and things that use your judgment on. But let's move on. And as I say, I'm trying to make enough time for conversation and discussion. And the handout that you can download eventually will discuss these things in more detail. Timing is a biggie. Timing is something that is very important. What is timing? For the dancers, they want to be walking to the beat of the music, 1 step per beat of the music. And they want to keep moving. They want to move continuously from one call to the next without hesitations and such. This whole thing about smooth dancing is, I think I mentioned at the beginning, it's really smooth calling, or calling so that dancers can dance smoothly. We want the dancers to walk to the beat of the music, keep walking, but not having to rush in doing so. What does that mean for the callers? Giving the commands so that the dancers can walk on the beat, move, keep moving without rushing. Typical problems in timing for callers: stop and go. I think this one's easy for you to visualize. You've all done it, both as dancers and callers. I hope you callers have been dancers. This is so easy to see if you're turning the sound off or a non-dancer and watching a caller. They'll dance a call, they'll stop and look around waiting for the caller. They'll dance another call, they'll wait. Clipping, that's when the calls come too fast and the dancers don't have time to execute each call and they have to run from one to the next. Or they may miss a call because they can't keep up or shortcut on them. Stacking is you leave enough time in the whole sequence for all the moves, but you'll say 2 or 3 calls at a clip rate and then leave time for the dancers to catch up. And then you'll call 2 or 3 more calls and leave time for them to catch up. But they don't know if you're going to leave time enough, so they're going to start racing or shortcutting. An example is heads do a square through and a right and left through. If I say it like that, there's a good chance that the heads are going to do a half square through and a right and left through, because by the time they hear right and left through, there's a couple standing in front of them right after the half square through, and they might just do it there. And of course, there are exceptions. Teaching, workshopping, you really want to stop when you're teaching and make sure everybody's got it so you can go on and make the next call, et cetera, because you don't want them to do it incorrectly. What are the advantages of timing? And what I mean good timing. It feels like dancing. What a strange concept for square dancing. It's less tiring. And I can't resist throwing in a little anecdote here. One of the biggest compliments I've ever gotten when calling was, I was up in New Hampshire calling, and this old timer comes up to me after about 4 or 5 tips, and he said, "Boy, do you call fast." And of course, the hairs on the back of my neck started to raise, because I was going to have to describe and explain to him what tempo was, fast versus slow. And I always really like a slow tempo. And we may talk about that later, but we'll just mention it quickly. It has a lot of advantages. But because of the close timing, it felt fast to him. Close timing was no time to stop and think about the next call. Anyway, back to what he said. "Boy, do you call fast." But I'm an old guy, and I usually have to sit out every other tip or every third tip. And I've been dancing all night long, and it feels great. Haven't had to sit down at all. So that made me feel great, because less tiring. He didn't have to, body have to jerk and stop and go and think and what have you. He could just move smoothly from one call to the next to the next. Again, that's a function of timing and body flow, etc. What have I got next here? Dancers tend to make fewer mistakes if your timing is good. Your timing and body flow will head them in the right direction with the right hand available so that they can do the next call, and it just sort of comes naturally. They make fewer mistakes, and as a result, again, you can call more variety. Timing, here's a biggie. So how do I do this? Well, it's a good question, but a hard answer. There are timing charts. They're a good reference, but I have my concerns about them. If you want to check some sequence you've written, especially for a singing call, that's great. But think of a timing chart says this call is going to take 7 beats, or let's stay on phrase, 8 beats or 6 beats. And so my mind while I'm calling is, let's see, I've just called this, I'm about to call that. This call is going to take them 8 beats. I want to deliver the call, the next call maybe 2 beats before they need it, so they have plenty of time to execute it without stopping. Let's see, this was 8, so 6. After 6 beats of this call, I've got to call the next one, or after 5 of the 7-beat call. Now, when was it I started? How many beats have gone by? Oh, I better call that. It just isn't a practical thing to do while you're calling. It just doesn't make sense to me. But it's a good should I, shouldn't I? It is an anecdote, sure. When Caller Lab started its timing charts, they asked Dick Ledger, a caller from Rhode Island, to start doing it. And Dick was a stickler on having dancers dance to it in fact, he made timing be the responsibility of the dancers rather than the caller. They should know this call takes so many beats and takes so many steps. And he sent a letter out to many, many callers saying, give me your thoughts on what each of these calls, the timing for each of these calls, and give me a place to start with. I wrote back, grand squared takes 32 beats. And that's all I know. I don't care about the rest of them. And he wrote back me a letter of, Don, I'm ashamed of you. This is terrible. You should know better than that. And he and I used to have this interesting relationship ever after. The timing charts, they did a really good job of trying to get them right. Getting dancers to walk through, getting a panel to count steps, the whole bit like that. But as I say, there's a good reference, but I don't think that practical. Then there's something that I don't remember the name of, but I think it's called metering. Somebody might throw in a better thing, but it's basically a lot of things you eventually learn, like calling right and left through and turn that girl. And if you use that and right and left through and turn that girl, the turn that girl gives you just enough time to let them do it and give you time to do the next command. It's something that sort of works into your system eventually. And the last method I'm aware of is called sight timing. And some people think sight timing is a horrible thing, but it's my preference. And what sight timing means is watching the dancers, figuring out that your timing, that they're stop and go, so you deliver the calls a little sooner, figuring out that they're rushing, so you call them a little later. It's watching what's going on, getting feedback from the dancers, practice, correct, feedback, practice, correct, feedback. It takes a long time, but it is what works out. And I pretty much, oh, pardon me, my lighting is falling apart here. All right. And somewhat, sight timing gets to be visualizing it in mental sight, but you know, I can do some reasonably good sight timing without dancers, just to do years of dancing. I mean, calling. And a lot of people are working on that on their virtual calling now too. Anyway. And then there's lots of other things besides that, but that we aren't going to take time to talk about because there's just not too much time. But hand availability has to be correct, which is not the old saying of using the same, don't use the same hand twice, but it's knowing when you can use a hand and when you can't. Tempo, we mentioned before. There's a whole workshop I could do on workshops we've done to check out different tempos. Ask Dan, I made him listen to a talk once from me on the phone about tempo. Different opinions on tempo. Tempo is how many beats per minute, how many steps per minute the dancers have to take. Caller Lab is working on saying instead of it's 128, they're saying it's a range from 122 to 132 or 128. I think more of it's 118 to 132. And I play around the 120 to 124, but that's a whole nother topic we won't get into now. Phrasing, calling with the phrase of the music, with the 8-beat count of it, or better yet, calling so the dancers can dance with the phrase of the music. It's not it's done all the time, rather, in contra dancing and traditional dancing, square dancing. But in Western style, it's very difficult. It's hardly done. But if you care about it, and you should, because it frequently makes the dancers feel better, it's something you should work on and can work on calls other than just the grand square. Sound. If the dancers can't hear you, they can't dance to you. It's not smooth. The sound in the hall has to be good, and you have to enunciate so they can understand the calls. There's a lot of et ceteras. I think I mentioned before, they have to, or maybe I just mentioned it when I was talking to myself before the presentation, they have to know the calls on that you're calling. You don't call plus calls at a mainstream dance. You don't call A1 calls at a mainstream or plus dance. If they haven't heard them, they can't dance them smoothly. Or if they've just learned them and aren't really accomplished at it, that will make things tough too. Slippery floor makes a difference. Super Bowl the night before makes a difference. Full moon makes a difference, etc. So how do we achieve it? Are you guys waiting for a magic bullet? I wish I had one. As I said with timing, this goes with the whole smoothness thing. You got to watch the dancers. First of all, you got to know what smooth dancing looks like with that kaleidoscope, with that continuous movement. Watch the dancers. If there's not smooth, if there's a hesitation, a running, a shortcut, this is a biggie. You have, biggie being really tough, you have to decide whether the problem is a slippery floor, or they don't know the call, or your body flow was off, or the timing was off. It's something you got to work at. Maybe you can practice by watching some other caller. And it's probably more than just one thing, but pick the biggest item. Then once you've determined what it is, you got to work on a solution. Feedback. You need feedback from the dancers. See what they're doing, figure out what's going wrong, try to fix it. And what do you do after that? More feedback. You just got to keep looking, figuring out what it is. As I said, this is not a magic bullet. It's just telling you all the stuff you're going to have to work on. Takes years, but it's worth it. Anyway, with that, hey, and I did it before the hour's up. I am going to have time for questions and discussion and looking at a blue sky. So with that, I'm going to see if I can figure out how to stop share. Oh, I know. Push that. Get out of there. And stop sharing. And
what I found, Dawn, is a lot of the timing that I use has to do with the age of the dancers. The older the dancers are, the slower the timing has to be. The younger the dancers are, the faster the timing has to be. So it has a lot to do with the age.
Can I make
Scott, that's no good. I've seen a lot of older dancers dance fast. You got to go dance in Japan. They dance at speed all the time. That's not a good.
Well, sir, you ought to try my program then, because I start out with a program of people who are medium speed, and then at the end of the week, I'm working with these people that are my age or younger and are very fast dancers. That has a lot to do with what's going on. I have one gentleman who's dancing in one of my groups that his square through has to be 8 counts. He can't get through it.
Scott, may I make a correction to what you said?
Sure.
You said it's timing changes with older folk or by
Correct.
age, and
Yes.
it's actually tempo. The timing still has to remain the same, delivering the call in time for them to go to the next call smoothly. If you want to slow things down, you slow the tempo. It gives them a split second more thinking time, but it does allow, and they don't have to physically move their body as fast, but it allows them to accomplish more. Tempo is, I hope, what you were talking about.
I've always thought the tempo has to do with the speed of the music. And,
yes.
And no, it doesn't, because I can use the same piece of music every week, and I have different programs every week, and not every dancer can dance to that tempo.
The same piece of music, the tempo can be changed from night to night. The number of beats per music you call can be changed to a quicker space depending on the night and the group.
Correct, but again, the age has a lot to do with how fast they can move to that piece of music.
As I said, also, that each of these topics is a full thing for discussion. In the discussion of tempo, it's not only the physical tempo, it's the perceived tempo, it's the feel of the music that makes it sound fast or slow, etc. Daryl, you're waving at us. Daryl, you're muted.
Hit your space bar.
Daryl, you're still muted. I don't know if you can hear us, but we don't read lips. Thank you.
Yeah, I was using the space bar and it was not working. Sorry about that. I have two, what I lovingly refer to as my Geritol for lunch bunches.
Yes.
Now, anybody that's old enough will know what I just said there. But they are average age anywhere from 70 to 80. Now,
Correct.
what I think Scott is probably talking about more than anything else isn't timing and it isn't tempo. It's watching the dancers and say, oh, well, I got to wait for Jerome to get through it before, otherwise his square breaks down. So it's a sight thing. And I deal with that and have for many, many years. Yeah, timing, tempo important. But if you lock in with the older crowd, the very older crowd, and lock in and say, well, I have to keep the timing proper. I can slow down the tempo. No, it ain't gonna work there. You have to wait for Jerome.
That brings up two things that I brought out. One is there are exceptions. There's workshopping, teaching, and Jerome. I forgot to put Jerome up. I didn't have time for all that. And the second thing is feedback. Watch the dancers, figure out what the problem is, and correct accordingly. But another ingredient.
In my case, it's Chuck is who it is. It's not Jerome, it's Chuck. Chuck is a fabulous dancer. He knows all the calls. He can do it from any position. The only problem is it takes him a while to get there.
I call for a group fairly regularly that's in a nursing home, and it's got people, we usually have 2 squares, and the age range is pretty high up, and I shouldn't say nursing home, it's an assisted living, but they have, well, anyway, there's a bunch of different kinds of people in the squares there. For one thing, we allow walk-ins who don't know anything, and we'll play around with them. And otherwise, nominally, it's mainstream with a few plus calls, and a lot of the people are former dancers who used to, dance in regular clubs and stuff before they moved in there. But I leave the music is generally at the same tempo that the music is running at, as always. I don't really vary that very much. And my delivery speed is, I'm not talking slower or anything, but I am giving them more time to do the calls. And in terms of when you deliver the call, again, that's like you have to look and see how they're doing. And of course, in one of the squares at any given moment, or maybe even both, there might be somebody, depending on which dancers are activated, there might be some very slow people who take a lot of steps to get where they're going, and you do that. But anyway, all the dancers report to me that they love the timing and so on and so forth. They love when I'm the caller that shows up there, and so on. So it's really a matter of watching them.
Or convincing them that, yeah, I'm sorry, that's good comments, Chris. Again, watching, feedback. I was going to make a snarky comment like, or else you train the dancers to love the strange way you call, but that's, never mind. Any other thoughts? Jeffrey, were you raising your hand?
Yeah. I think tempo could be an apparent thing that's caused by the feel of the music. An example of this, Wade Driver released 2 tunes 40 years ago. One was Coffee Black, Cigarettes, Start to Stay Like All the Rest. What's that called? Some Broken Hearts Never.
Some Broken Hearts, yeah.
Yeah. And the other one was Dream Lover. Now
Yes.
they both have exactly the same figure, and you can play them at exactly the same tempo, but Dream Lover always feels faster than the other one.
Correct.
So it's the feel of the music that's making a bit of a difference. It's the rock beat or whatever it is. That was about Dream Lover, but that's what makes it feel different. but they're both exactly the same as tempo goes and timing.
Delivery,
That's just
delivery, the wording. If it comes faster, it sounds faster. Fewer words, more words. More words sounds faster. It's going to make you feel like it's faster. Sometimes a syncopated rhythm makes it feel faster. Tempo doesn't change.
yeah.
Let me tell you about work that I've done with tempo. Jim Mayo and I, many years ago, were discussing tempo and deciding, you know, what's good, what's bad. And we got together about 4 squares of strong plus or A1 dancers so that whatever was called, there wouldn't be any problems with their understanding the calls. And then we had 6 callers, very popular, good callers from the area, at least one known to call at a fairly quick clip. In other words, fast tempo, many beats per minute, you know, typically 128, 130 beats per minute. And another very, very popular good caller who called it about 118 beats per minute. And we did a lot of different things. And one of the things I remember was I said, without music, I want you guys to, you talking to the 4 squares, walk through, head square through and relay the deucey. And so they did. And Jim and I both counted how many beats per minute, how many steps per minute without music their natural walking pace was. You know, that was enough. Square through and relay the deucey was enough time for them to and they all sort of came to a normal walking pace. And I can't remember what it was, but it was around 124. And we did all sorts of different exercises. We did what the dancers felt when they were dancing to these different callers. I had preconceived notions of what would come out of this. And when I turned out that my preconceived notions were wrong, that it was dancer perception. They were comfortable dancing anywhere from 118 to 128. And the perception of what it felt like depended on, as Daryl was saying, how many words and extra beats you put in with your voice while you're doing it, or as Jeffrey was saying, the type of music that was used. But as long as it was timed well and interesting material, they were happy with anything. And I was really kind of surprised by that. But we spent a full evening in a hall that was over somebody's barn down the street that I frequently rented. As far as timing charts, just one other anecdote. I did a session at Color Lab many years ago. I can't remember who was on the session with me. I know Dick Ledger was sitting in the audience and shaking his head for the whole thing. But I put on 2 records called side that I'd have a square of dancers dancing through. One was by me and one was by John Jones. And everybody watched the dancers with timing in mind and watched that the dancers didn't rush, didn't wait, got through all these things very nicely. And then we went over to the blackboard, whiteboard, I can't remember, and went to the timing. We wrote out the different figures for these 2 singing calls and wrote out the timing per the timing charts. And it turned out that singing call that I had recorded had more than 64 beats per section, and the one that John recorded had far fewer, and yet the dancers looked like they were dancing right. And the difference in the timing is, you know, if I'm going to do a right and left through, am I moving in that direction? Is my hand ready, et cetera, et cetera. As I say, timing charts are good reference, but we proved that they're not perfect in that respect. And I've been rambling. John, did you have your hand up or are you just swatting flies? John, Jurgens. Is it Jurgens or Jurgens?
Well, it's John Jurgens, but I'm just sitting here watching along.
Okay.
I don't have a comment yet.
You will, I know. Any other comments?
Well, one of the people that you mentioned was several times was Dick Ledger. Well, Dick Ledger is a whole different animal of caller than most of us. Dick Ledger called with a guitar, and he called with the timing that he created when he called. So his timing was his own thing that he did. I don't think you can compare Dick Ledger to, many other callers. He's totally different.
I don't want to say anything against Dick, but he claimed to be big on timing, but in fact, he was big on phrasing, and the timing suffered a little here and there. And Jim Mayo and I used to pass funny glances back and forth when he screwed up his timing. But Dick Ledger's strongest feature was he was a great entertainer with the guitar and with his presentation. He was an entertainer, and he was a good caller because it takes so many things, and he had a strong strength in one of those.
Yep.
Daryl, you were...
Yeah, I always kind of compared Dick Ledger to a contra prompter.
Mhm.
If something took, you mentioned earlier, if something takes 8 beats, you wait 6, deliver them on the 7th and 8th beats. That way the dancers have a chance to hear it. The message goes from the head to the feet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that really works in our favor as square dance callers, modern Western square dance callers. The same type of delivery, our delivery is based on these 4-beat to 8-beat segments. And if you can deliver on 2 beats ahead, in other words, 4 ladies chain, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, chain them back, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, head square through 4. That it gives a feeling of smoothness to the delivery, and it works really good for if you've got a good feel for how long it takes to execute the movements until you get to zoom. That bam, it's just like that.
You're done.
All of our movements don't actually fit into that pattern. You said that earlier in your timing, Don. But most
And
of
especially
them
in phrasing, but
most of them do, though. And that combined with the actual delivery of the names of the calls, right and left through, takes 2 beats, star through, 2 beats, swing through, 2 beats, square through, 2 beats, past the ocean, you can say it in 2 beats, wheel and deal, 2 beats, Ferris wheel, 2 beats, touch a quarter, 2 beats. That's the thing. You can lock in to not only the rhythm, which is what dancers actually dance to, is dance to the rhythm. You can lock your delivery into the musical rhythm and deliver with good timing. You're going to have good, smooth flowing dances up until you get to zoom, which is a one beat delivery, right? Well, there's a lot of argument over people saying center zoom.
Right.
It's tough because, yeah, I'm not going to get into that argument with anybody, but that is the reason why most callers say center zoom, is because they turn that 1 beat into 2 beats. And I'm not against that, because I like the feeling of good, smooth dancing and delivery. Okay, I'll shut up.
I wasn't sure for a second, Daryl, when you were talking about Zoom, whether you're talking about this media we're using for all conversing with each other, and that sort of screws up the body flow too when you're calling with Zoom, but you made it clear. Let's hear from some of the newer callers, your thoughts on when you were thinking of smoothness. Did it impart all these parts, or were you just thinking body flow? And are you worried about how you're going to be able to distinguish one of these things from the other? And just your general thoughts on what we've been discussing in general. Speak up. Oh, Carol, you've got your hand up. So have you.
You were saying about sight timing, which is useful. What do you do about keeping your timing instead of stop-start when you've got a very mixed bunch of people? Like we were saying about some people, they can't get round the square, whereas others are really keen and eager and keeping to the time. You've got to keep everybody happy, so you do tend to end up being a bit stop-starty sometimes.
That's a good question. And one of the things I do, believe it or not, Carol, is to slow the tempo down. Because that split second, it go 2 beats per minute slower. And it's a very small fraction of a second difference between the time that they hear the call and have to execute it. But it really is enough to help a lot of people get through more material. And if you have to slow it down 4 beats per minute, as long as, and slowing down the music, more, part of the tempo workshop that we've done, slowing down the music makes some people think it's draggy and no fun, but you have to compensate with excitement in your voice, and it's all perception, or adding extra syllables in the process. It's all perception, but still, if you give them that extra time with the slower tempo, that'll help a few of those people be able to keep up with the timing. But yeah, and some of the people that are just really have troubles learn to shortcut on their own. But it is a problem. And sometimes, again, especially in a teaching situation, it's worth it to get stop and go. And sometimes if, it's only a small percentage of the people, maybe even sacrifice them to give the majority good dancing. Carol, finish your comment and then we'll go to Helen.
Yeah, the only thing I was thinking is that when you slow it down too much, when it gets to a singing call and they're going out to a dance, they can't do it. If they go to a dance, everywhere is too fast for them.
So talk to the other callers and convince them of the advantage of a slow tempo also. That's hard to say. But at least it'll keep them in the feeling of knowing to keep moving and keep flowing. And it might, their reaction time might speed up too with that. Helen, what were you going to say?
I think you asked what the newer callers sort of were thinking when we were talking about smooth dancing, and I just wanted to say that for me it's really two things. It's the body flow, and that's something I can think about beforehand by sort of looking at my modules and
yes,
making sure they're okay. But then the second thing, which I think is maybe you have to do on the spot, that's the delivery, and I'm really working on not having the stop and go, because, and I have it sometimes for the dancers, but that I'm able to do it without stop and go. And that's something I'm working on. And I just thought a little comment there. I think you called it metering, where you say extra words. Well, I've made this decision. I'm never going to say extra words because my dancers don't all understand English. So I have to teach them this right and left through. And they don't need to worry about, if I say something else, they'll start wondering, is she telling me to do something else? So I've made the decision that I'm not going to do it. When I call 4 ladies chain, I just want to say chain them back again, but chain them back again is not a call. And so they don't understand it. So I say 4 ladies chain, 4 ladies chain. I mean, it's not much fun for me, but for I only have the basic dancers. For them, it sort of helps them. They don't need to think about other things. That's just some comments I wanted to make.
I found when I called in Prague that the best helper words were to shut up, just to call the calls alone. It makes a big difference. I'm curious about other guys' thoughts. I've been amazed when I'm doing party nights in the US that I use a lot of filler words, but it's how quickly a non-dancer is able to figure out and filter out the filler words and pick out the calls and filter out the other stuff. It amazes me how quick they are at that. But it's interesting when they don't know the language kind of thing. Oh, you made it. Oh, the other thing, one of the things that would sometimes help you is, not you in particular, Helen, but anybody that's having some questions about this, get a chance to put a video camera on the dancers and videotape it, and then play it back without the sound and just watch the movement. And that's going to tell you a lot about whether the dancing is smooth or not. And it might even tell you enough to try and figure out what it is, but it takes time, work on the feedback. Any other comments? Steve.
I got a comment and a question both. The comment I have is that I call primarily in Kentucky and the surrounding states, Indiana, Ohio, what area, those areas. But in Kentucky, I found that the dancers, pretty much all the dancers kind of, no matter, don't travel 50, 60 miles. They all dance together at every location, whether Louisville, whether it's Lexington or wherever for that matter, the same faces at just about every location. Okay. But that being said, there's only one dancer that I have a problem trying to keep my timing with. And it's because she moves like really slow. Okay. And so in doing my patter, I can take all the time in the world to make sure that she's with me the whole time. The singing call aspect of it though is I cut out calls to where this way she can dance smooth along with everybody else. So in other words, my typical, and now with the singing calls, I just do the head square through, swing through, boys run, veer left, Ferris wheel, center pass through, swing the corner. That's really all I'll really do to really cut, and I cut the timing. Where she could actually dance and stay with everybody else. Is there any other suggestions that somebody might have other than cutting out calls to where she could stay with me?
Some of the things that I've actually taught some of my dancers, if they're having troubles, they don't have, if they're falling behind, they don't have to do every call. If I call a forward and back, they can leave that out because I've seen them do quick steps forward, quick steps back. If I call a do-si-do, sometimes they can leave that out. And sometimes, to answer your question more directly, I'll throw in an extra forward and back or an extra do-si-do. So the others are dancing, but maybe inform this person that you can leave that out. These are calls to filter out their patter filler words or something. Anybody else got any ideas for Steve? That's an excellent question. Phil?
Sometimes, we've got one guy at our club too he's a great guy, he knows the calls, but yeah, he goes about 2 miles an hour. Sometimes if you've got a big enough crowd, you got to leave him behind. You don't want to sacrifice your whole floor for one guy. Unfortunately, that's something we have to do sometimes.
Primarily in California, we do stuff like that all the time because people travel here a lot. That one guy that I was mentioning, my Chuck, he travels all over the place. So you might see him at your dance, but you might not see him until he's in Fresno, or he's in someplace like Reno or something like that. You'll see them, but you have to adjust your timing based on where they're at.
Obviously, Chuck's not in Kentucky, is that right, Steve? He travels too much for that.
Right.
Mel, you got your hand up nicely.
I've got 3 things on that. The first one was when you were talking about the difference between timing and tempo, time and tempo. It's a phrase that we're throwing out an awful lot without really, I think, understanding it. So I just did some very quick, what you're saying, giving him that extra half a second to do this by changing the tempo down 2 beats. That half a second, it's not just a platitude or a phrase. I just did the simple math here, and when we look at how records used to be produced and how they always had the tempo. It's 124, it's 126, 128, 132, whatever the tempo was. And most callers would say, well, you just set your turntable to about 44 or 43 to adjust the tempo. That's speed that will adjust the tempo. But what it really works out to is if you're calling at 120 beats per minute, okay, so just picture an average 448, that's 764 beat phrases. That's going to take you 224 seconds to get through it. If you're calling at 122, it's going to take you 220 seconds. That's 4 seconds difference over 7 phrases. In other words, half a second each phrase. Each figure you do is half a second shorter. So each movement you do, let's just say you have an average of 10 movements in a singing call, that's 0.05 of a second is what you're giving the dancers extra time. But that 0.05, that's less time than it takes you to count to 1, actually gives the dancers a lot more thought time and makes the dancers smooth for them. So a difference of 2 beats is half a second each 7-beat phrase, or each one of those 7 phrases, but it makes a big difference for the dancers. It's not a lot of time difference. The second one comes up to what Carol was saying.
Just on that point, Mel, I did say a fraction of a second. I don't even think it's up to a half second. But
Well,
it's
it
amazing.
is. It's actually exactly 1/2 a second.
Well, I thought you said 0.05. Anyway.
I says the difference for each movement is about 0.05 of a second.
And it's amazing how much that little bit of extra time really helps people. Go ahead with your second point, Mel.
It does. Carol made a comment, I think it was you, Carol, about one of the hardest things when you get dancers that dance and you get a caller that's calling really, really slow and they go to a dance, they never come back because they feel so frustrated they can't dance because their caller does that. I'm actually going to give you a compliment here, Don. When I was calling in New England, going across, I noticed that the dance timing was pretty much standardized around all the clubs. I went, I think I was in Utah, or I was down in Big Sky, Montana, sorry. I was calling in Montana.
Right.
And there was a lot of variances between the dancers. And it was one dancer that said they had gone out to Florida, then they'd gone up to New England for the winter time just to do that. And they went square dancing there. And the caller actually, it was a mainstream group, the caller actually took time to get the dancers a whole session just walking to the music. And he came back when he was there at the dance in Montana and said, you know, we never taught that. We were never taught to actually move to the music in a big circle. We spent a whole night walking in a circle and walking to the beat. And since I do that, my dancing is so much smoother. One of the biggest issues that I find with a lot of new callers is they treat old people as incapable. And this goes to what John was saying. Older people can dance with the beat of the music. Yes, you have to make allowances, but making allowances of changing a 10-beat square through to a 25-beat square through is not an allowance. Making a change of a 10-beat square through at 130 with your tempo down to 124, that's giving them an extra 1.5 seconds to do that and move to the music. It will make a big, big difference. That's the importance of the difference between timing and tempo. And I think, Dawn, it was you that said, if you need 32 beats to teach square through, take 32 beats to teach square through, but get them dancing it in 10 beats. It was something along that line, and that's very, very important.
The another concern of mine, and I haven't been dancing or haven't been able to call for many years, to call very much due to the isolated area I live in. But there's a big tendency to use modern. There's a big tendency to using newer modern music, and my real concern is that callers have the music going in the background but don't use it. They just chant over it, and frequently that chanting doesn't emphasize the beat of the music. And if you don't do that, the dancers aren't going to be able to walk with the beat of the music. It's got to be a combination of the music and the way the callers use it. to automatically pretty much get the dancers to walk to the beat of the music. You shouldn't have to teach it. You should have to make it call so that they can't help but do that. And then the timing.
I do that, and I use a lot of more modern music when I call. A lot of my music is the more modern pop stuff that you're going to hear on the radio, but I find that the 2/4 time signature, which is in standard square dance time signature, it just doesn't appeal to me or to the people that come to my dances. Whereas some people, they have to have the 2/4 time signature, boom chicka, boom chicka, boom chicka, boom chicka. Whereas I use a lot of 4/4 time signature, like gold or something like that.
Scott, if you actually use the music, that's fine. But if it's just making noise in the background, like a lot of stuff I hear on YouTube these days,
right?
You could make your performance much better. Using it is, with the emphasis on that, work is a good thing.
Now, the third thing I had there, you mentioned timing. I always look at the three aspects. One is the call timing, that's the lead timing. Then there's the delivery timing, and then there's the execution time. And when all three of those really, really work together with the time, the dance timing, which is working with the beat, you get a really, really smooth dance. You get a really, really smooth caller. I was listening to a thing on YouTube. It was a caller that was calling. And I was listening to his execution, his lead, and his delivery time, which was absolutely perfect. But I was watching the dancers dance, and it was really, really stop and go. And he was actually using a piece of very upbeat. It was a calypso reggae type music. It was a beautiful 4/4 time. But the music was going up, down, up, down, up, and down, up, and it was just going like that. And the dancers could not track that beat because there was so much instrumental rhythm going on. It was a beautiful piece of music, but that up and down timing, or that thumb wheel timing that was really, really popular in the early 80s, turn the music right off when you're calling, turn it way up when you're not calling, really throws a lot of dancers off, especially with a lot of the more modern tempo music, the modern beat, because there's a lot more instrumental filler on it. So be very, very careful if you're a thumb wheel caller.
Yeah, you have to experiment with your music. You have to actually keep checking with the dancers, see how well the dancers can handle that piece of music.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have a new piece that I use. I love it, but I can't use it anymore. So I actually throw it away. And I use, stuff that I know works.
Before, John, were you actually raising your hand that time? Before you do that, let me mention that our nominal hour and 5 minutes is up. And if anybody feels they have to leave, we won't be offended, just slip away. But before you go, I want to thank Dan for the engineering. Let's see who presented today. Oh yeah, me. And most of all, you guys for coming, staying, participating. And with that, now let's get to the good part of the program that we always have afterwards, and a lot of discussion. First, John, then Dan.
Well, I got one more carry on from Mel. Just talked about delivery and all that other stuff. My problem is the process in my brain to get to the next call. I need to figure out some way to, if I'm going to even try a site call or something, to call up to get the next call queued in place so I can deliver it in the amount of time. So I have to figure out some way to exercise my mind to get the calls there available to me so I can execute them in time for the dancers. It's something internal to me, but I mean, if we could come up with some exercise where we could, I don't know, deliver patter, teach myself how to deliver patter on time, that would be a neat exercise. I mean, we couldn't do it on a Zoom, but it'd be nice to do it like one-on-one, just to, not even with dancers, just to deliver the pattern in time with somebody watching.
Right.
Let me repeat what I said at the beginning and have said, in other words, previous times. There are so many things we as callers have to do, and most of them we have to do all at once. And the best way to practice these is to isolate one thing at a time. John, you're asking us very good to isolate the how do I think of the next call and keep moving ahead and going with the next one, a big part. One of the many things we have to worry about at that same time is smoothness, as I said here. And I think we should worry about it because it makes dancing easier, better, nicer, more fun. And that, unfortunately, has many, many subparts, which we identified here today, or most of them. But it takes time. It takes a lot of work. And I think the first, as I've learned and many others have, the first part of problem solving is identifying the problem. So hopefully we've identified many of the components here that you guys can work on later, but it takes time. It's hard. And yeah, I'm not sure quite how to work on that in the Zoom session, John. But anyway, Dan, you had your hand up. Go for it.
Unmute. So a practical thing on learning to call with the rhythm and in time is Buddy Weaver has a podcast that is a whole bunch of, well, I think looks like he's gone to current stuff now, but if you go scroll back in the podcast, he's got a whole bunch of stuff from the 60s of callers calling then. And I found those were spectacular to help my rhythm and delivery, because the choreography is very simple, but it's delivered with impeccable timing and really worth listening to and chanting along with to try to develop your own sense of rhythm if you don't have that yet. That was one of the things that helped me get my sense of rhythm. And then the other thing is just reiterating what Helen said. I still say the helper words in my head, but I try not to say them out loud.
I'd like to say something, if I can.
Sure.
To John and to Scott. John first. I know it sounds like a super redundancy, but I'm going to say modules. You've got two things that you need to do as a caller. One is how to call, the other is what to call. What to call is modules. I don't care what anybody tells you. If all you're going to try to do is combine one movement at a time while you're trying to call, you're never going to get there. You need to have those combinations, and the combinations are called modules, period. End of that story. As far as the 2/4 timing, understand, I was a music record producer for over 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now the time signature, the 2/4 time, the 4/4 time, what they have in common is being able to deliver to those 4-beat measures. Even 2/4 time, you treat it as if it were 4/4 time, because you're not going to count 1 2 1 2 1 2. You're going to count 1 2 3 4 1 2 for your delivery. It's just pure and simple. Now, if you're going to use the modern, what you're referring to as modern music, you still have to deliver in 2/4 timing. If you stop and think about something like right and left through, right and left through, 1 and 2, that's what it is. Your movements are in 2/4 time. Your delivery has to be locked into that if it's going to sound right and dance right for the dancers. And of course, that's in comes under how to call, not to what to call, but how to call. The dancers dance to what? They dance to rhythm. You don't have to have all that instrumentation there, as long as you got that boom, 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 boom. 1 2 3 4. 1 2 3 4. You want to fit your movements too. You can say right and left through, pass through, trade by, right and left through. pass through, trade by, element, you know, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you might, the idea, the timing, the way it fits in, like I say, we have these, am I getting too long at this? I don't mean to cut everybody else out, but I think this is important. The 2-beat names of the movements, right and left through. The tendency, if you're familiar with the figure, what they call it, chicken plucker. Head square through, right and left through, pass through, trade by, right and left through, pass through, trade by. Now, understand, I've taught a lot of collar schools throughout the past 45 years. And one of the hardest things to overcome for timing is you get 1, 2, 3, 4, head square through 4, go. Right and left through the outside 2, pass through, trade by. Those extra 2 beats, we get so locked into the 2-beat phrasing that we ignore the 4-beat phrasing, and that destroys our timing. But still, the 2-beat, the 2/4 delivery rhythm, regardless of the music that you're using, and John, modules. And you just about have most of the whole story as far as what to call, how to call, wrapped up in what I just said. And I know it's a lot. I apologize.
Daryl, I have to tell you that I believe you're wrong. I believe that you have to take each individual piece of music for what it is. I can take 2 pieces of music. One is a 2/4 time signature. The other is a 4/4 time signature. And I'm going to call to them differently in order to make it come out so the dancers can dance. I really disagree with what you were saying. At this point, I want to interject something. When I was studying opera, because that's one of the things I've done is sing opera, what we've learned is that normal people, opera singers, for example, can do like probably about 10 or 13 things at once. A square dance caller has to do 23 things at once in order to do what they've got to do.
You
One
have
thing I
every
noticed
right in
is
the
that
world to disagree with me, but I will disagree with you. We're not singing opera. In the first place, music is music, and beats are beats. And if you're expecting the dancers' footfalls to be in there, it doesn't make much difference what music you use as long as you have those footfalls. Now, I say, as far as the delivery, past the ocean, it's still the down, up, down, up, down, up. And that's the nature of the commands in themselves. Just the delivery is going to tell you that 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and right and left through and turn that girl. It's going to be going down, up, down, up. Now you can say right and left through, star through. Say nothing, not have any particular feel for it, but I still think the right and left through and turn that girl, pass through and a wheel and deal and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. It's a delivery thing, but yes, you go ahead and continue. You'll probably prove me wrong over the next 50 years.
Well, I want to jump in the middle of both of you, because when I'm calling to certain different kinds of music, I have some. I mostly use traditional square dance records. However, people are always saying, "Oh, your music is so much better than whatever." That's just a choice of which of those traditional, regular old square dance records you're using. But sometimes I call to popular music. And usually not the most current kind of popular music, but recordings of Great American Songbook type songs, and my delivery when I'm calling to those is in a way very different than when I'm calling to the quote unquote square dance music,
Yep.
And now, as for what Daryl is saying, the way that I say the words right and left through and things like that, that doesn't change. But what does change is how far ahead I'm calling it so that the dancers will be able to dance on the beat. And you know, I'm not literate enough to explain exactly what's going on there, but there's definitely something different. And so I'm hearing you know, you two guys going back and forth, and it's, yeah, that part doesn't change, and yet there's this other part that really does change. At least that's what I'm calling. That's just for me anyway.
I want to throw in a couple things. First of all, Chris, that's pretty gutsy to jump in between those guys like you were going to. I want to stay out of their way when they're doing that. But to everybody, differences of opinion is good. I mean, you know, some people want to know about choreographic management. Should I do modules or sight or mental image, etc.? There are different ways to approach the same problem and different thoughts, and the more we hear, the better overall understanding we have if we can learn to average these things out. Yep. Dan, I was going to ask you where we find out about the podcast stuff you were talking about, but I see that you posted it in the chat. So if anybody's interested in Buddy Weaver's stuff, it's there. Anyone else we haven't heard from and should? Anyone wants to? Oh, anything else you got to say, guys? As usual, I'm looking for topics or presenters for future sessions.
Incidentally, if I can say one more thing, and then I'll shut up, and I'll probably go fix breakfast for the wife.
Daryl, it's after the hour, so you can say anything you want. Go for it.
Okay. I apologize if I seem hardline on this music and everything. I use a lot of modern music. I use quite a bit of it, probably more than the old fiddles and banjos and stuff like that for my pattern. And I still say that I deliver those movements to each. And that's 2/4 timing, no matter what. With that said, I'm going to say good morning or good afternoon or good evening to everybody. And stay with it. You're doing well. Nice presentation, Don, as expected. And we'll see everybody probably this afternoon at Mel's Zoom session. Good day, everybody.
Daryl, thanks for your 3 cents worth.
more like 10 cents worth, but I already apologize. So I
inflation. Well, say hi to Yvonne for me.
I'll do that.
Yeah,
anyone else?
My computer has now jumped an hour forward, so it's now 3:19 here. So remember that if you haven't switched time, it is an hour ahead from where it used to be for the next session.
So you've gone off of daylight savings time, is that correct?
Oh, I have no idea. It's still the middle of the night here as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, I had something pent up. There was some comments going by about teaching the dancers timing and a session where they did nothing but walk them around and practice. But and people said, oh yeah, we don't teach that. But we do teach that. The very first day when they come in and they don't know anything, and you have them get in a circle, a big circle maybe, and say circle to the left, you know, with some music going and stuff, you're teaching them right then. You're always teaching them everything you're doing. You know, that's just one, you know, your attitude, how this is going to go, everything about the whole experience. You're teaching them from the moment that, you know, from the moment you walk towards the stage. But as far as the timing goes, I mean, we start teaching them that, or at least, you know, probably should say a little bit anyway, when you're just first having them circle to the left for the very first time.
Good point, Chris. And that reminds me of another Carol, or was it Helen, that when you have slow people, there are some things that you can get them through nicely. You know, it's not used too often, but if you do a circle left 8 beats and then circle right, or a right-hand star so far and come back by the left so far. If one square on a circle left goes around 3.5 times and the other square only goes around once, then you do a circle left the other way. The faster square is going to get back home because they move faster. The slower square is going to also get back home because they use faster. So it's one way to iron out the timing of that kind of a thing. Yolanda, you had your hand up, but you're still muted.
And sorry, I muted Yolanda because I thought that was the noise in the background just as Don said something.
That's why I stay muted. My fan is working overtime. So you guys were asking what the newbies thought. Well, what I've gotten out of this session is I need to go back and record myself and then use the knowledge I've got from Zoom dancing and then dance to my own recording and to see how smooth it is then and to adjust accordingly if it isn't.
That's a great idea. And hopefully it will be an enjoyable session for you. Sometimes it gets embarrassing, but no, as I say, you've got to see what's going on and then work on the feedback and then go slowly, one step at a time. And the hard part I mentioned before is isolate when something isn't right, isolating which of the many components it could be. Yeah. And that's the one to work on. And even if it's more than one, you have to pick the one that will be easiest to fix first and fix that one and then work on the next one. Mel, go for it.
I just wanted to say hello to Hannah and Lars. It's finally good to put a face to the name that's always on the back end of the computer.
Oh, there they are. Hi. I didn't see you guys come in. Any other comments, questions, suggestions, complaints?
Well, I have one suggestion, and that was, I think it was John who was saying he was having trouble trying to figure out what to say next. And one of the ways that you can help to work on that is by doing formation awareness games. Just two callers, one-to-one, looking at each other, giving names of calls, what you can do from that formation. And going on with that, that will help you in not only giving you the ability to pick out the next call to do, but also to be able to do it fast enough in the right timing, that kind of thing.
Scott, we've been doing some sessions like that here before we had the pleasure of having you join us. But it's not quite as effective when you've got a whole group of people doing it and it's not real time, but we have been doing several sessions of things like that.
There have been some of the sessions that have been here that have gone on. One in particular went on for about 6 hours with 4 different callers in here, and that's exactly what it was just move for move for move, or a series of movements, and where do I go to from here? And you had until Taminations got to the end of it to have the next call. If you didn't, we started over again. Same kind of thing.
It is different over Zoom, but what's amazing to me is that even though it's just Zoom and the person might not even be on screen, you can still see the smoke coming out of their ears.
Well, and what Steve put in the chat about just listing everything that he could possibly call from those different formations, I did that same thing and it helped tremendously, in addition to filling out those call analysis sheet, because when you really understand to break down that call and what it can do and where it moves people, then you know your calls.
I'm just going to add a little product placement here for Chris Stacy and add a little bit of pressure on Chris. Looking at a call when you call it and analyzing what can I do from here, what can I call from here. Hopefully Chris is in about 3 weeks going to be doing a session for us, which is basically along the line of what can I call from here, but what should I never call from here, and here's the reasons why.
Well, actually, that idea came from a suggestion of somebody on one of these sessions that suggested a particular sequence that I strongly objected to, and it's I've been working on that presentation a little bit, and I think it's going to be a lot of some of the unwritten principles of square dance choreography. I mean, we have the definitions and we have our formation charts and so forth, but there's some other things that are not written down that everybody knows, well, except that maybe they don't. You know, it's certain things that maybe you pick up over time, or maybe you don't. So I was going to look at some examples of basically some bogus things, and maybe some controversial things, and talk about why I objected to that particular piece of choreography, but more generally what the principles are that go into that analysis. And so it's things that you shouldn't call, but it's more about reasons of it. It's a little bit about how to interpret the definitions. What are some of the unwritten rules of the choreography that we use that people may or may not have noticed?
So will you have a written document on the unwritten rules of square dancing?
Of course, Janet, your comment had to come like that, right?
Written document.
Just to put it into perspective, what Chris is talking about was there was a generalized comment, and it was from a brand new caller. It was a perfectly valid point. After reading the definition, he said, well, can I call heads pass through lead to the right? And by the definition, absolutely, yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
Which generated a conversation of, well, yeah, you can do that, but that would be a challenge. But then you would give helper words, you know, lead to the right, step forward to a two-faced line. But then we got into the offsets and what can you call from here and all of this other kind of stuff. And it sort of led into the discussion of, yes, you can call it, but should you call it is another question.
Yes.
And it led into, and this is one of the things that I really, really like about these sessions and what Don was saying earlier. It's really good that two different callers can get on here and express 7 different opinions between those two callers, which is quite commonplace. But there's nothing wrong with having dissenting decisions as long as it's not an argumentative decision, because we're all discussing the same thing and we all come away looking at things just a little bit differently. You talk about your delivery timing. I happen to be in Daryl's camp on that. Most things are 2-beat delivery, but you argue 4/4 and 2/4 timing, but your delivery timing is still exactly the same. It's just a different metering on 4/4, 2/4. If I do square through in 4/4, I'm doing square through. I'm doing it on the boom with the half, and I'm doing it on the boom chuck. You know, it all depends. And then there's things like spin chain and exchange the gears. Well, don't ever try and get that into 2 beats.
Steve, you had a comment before. If you unmute yourself, we'll listen.
Actually, it was what Janet just said. I just mentioned a thing in the chat, and I was going to just mention it, you know, with everybody here too. You know, that's all it was, is about listing everything I can do from ocean waves, then from two-faced lines, from lines, you know, what to call next, you know, when I see these formations, you know, and also the time, of course, timing of the delivery, delivery timing as well. You know, that's some of the stuff that my mentor has actually had me do as homework. You know, it's helped me a lot.
Yolanda, I was thinking of, you said you're going to record yourself to practice. If you have the chance, record video so you can get video and audio and listen to each of them back separately, just to see what it looks like without hearing what the sounds should be. Or, well, I guess if you're just recording yourself without dancers, I guess that doesn't make much sense. But, and if you have any way of recording the music and the voice on a separate channel so that you can isolate the voice when you listen to it, take the music out, you can learn a lot from that too. Anyone else?
Carol?
Yes, Carol.
I was going to say, it must be me, but I get a brain freeze. I can be calling and I know what I want to call next, but the name has gone. So I tend to have a list of all the moves that my group have got up to, so that if my brain just goes bloop, at least I can have a quick look and think of something else that I can do from there to keep going.
Carol, if you ever find a caller that says they've never had that happen to them, they're a liar.
Yeah.
Carol, I had a caller using mental image many, many years ago. And when he had a brain freeze, he used to say, I have a mental breakdown. But
Yes. I tend to do both. I tend to have the list of the calls that I have, plus I have a whiteboard which I write down the calls that I'm working on. So I have that all down, you know, next to me, both things, so that I can continue calling.
Actually, you make a point. A lot of newer callers have been using the whiteboard, not to explain, not to teach, but just to put the list up of what they've done. And they found that just that visual word recollection twigs what they did the last week. So what they'll have is a running list of what we've done.
Yep.
Here's what we've done, and then last week we looked at this, and they just put that up in the front. And a lot of them said that has really, really helped their new dancers, because it just brings it right back into the memory.
In my caller schools, I give out whiteboards with magnetic dolls that can work on the whiteboard. So I use the whiteboard for that purpose. When I'm doing a class, I write down the calls that I want to teach next, and I write those calls down. And it has nothing to do with the list that they're on, but it's also, I use that as a mental reminder of what I want to call.
And I'm all for anything that helps the dancers be successful. So.
Mel, you're talking about the whiteboard, putting the calls where the dancers can see them also?
Yeah, well, what a few of them are saying, they have a whiteboard and it's basically 3 boxes. You've got a long box down the left side, which is everything we've done up to this point. The top on the right side is what we did last week. And then underneath is what we're looking at this week. And then they only just move them down and then just move the one up, and they just keep it going. So a lot of dancers will come in early. I know in Europe they do this an awful lot. They usually show up half an hour early in case somebody missed last week. They can do the refreshing. They do that in some of the places in Canada. They go through and they use the Sicilian circle to go over the whiteboard, and dancers can say, I'm not sure about that, but I can't remember what the name is. But when they go through the list, they walk in, they read it, and they say, oh yeah, that square through thingy where you go around the chair in the middle. I need to go over that one again. Oh, okay.
So,
great.
so this is like a weekly weekly handout, except it's done as a whiteboard?
Essentially the same thing, but what they found is the whiteboard was infinitely more effective than giving them a piece of paper or a handout, because they walk in and that's the first thing they do is go to the whiteboard and see, okay, what did I do last week? Yeah, okay, I remember that. Now what am I doing this week? Okay, some people like to read ahead, others don't, but it just sticks it in their mind. It puts them in the thought mode right at the beginning.
Scott,
I just thought I'd throw that out when you mentioned whiteboard, because a lot of new callers are going to that.
Scott, when you were talking about whiteboard, were you talking about one for yourself or for the dancers?
Just for myself. I keep it on the side next to me. I also use it for sites. If I can, you know, I can write down my sites as I see them. So I can write down my sites, but I also keep track of all the calls there.
I thought you guys were having a disconnect, one whiteboard for the callers and one for the dancers.
No, I got what he was saying. It just twigged that thought in my brain.
Mel, one of my concerns, well, it depends on how, I would probably use it differently, because as I said in my session on, excuse me, on teaching, I will totally reteach it the second night, not expect them to think about it or learn about it, but teach it like they have never heard it before. So I don't want the words up there and having the wrong image going through their mind. Maybe the third week, when I try to do a brief review of it, the words can be, the thing can be up there. If I'm, my whiteboard is a week behind. Good idea, though.
I do the same thing, Don. I have that written down on the side, so I know what to teach. I know what to call, not for the dancers. I don't let the dancers see my whiteboard.
I keep notes like maybe what you're talking about on the laptop, and you know, as soon as I start calling, I've flipped over to Square View or something. But right after that and before that, I flip over to my notes that have you know, otherwise I'd never be able to remember what I'm supposed to be teaching this week, or what I did last week, or you know, where was I yesterday.
On a sort of unrelated thing here. Chris and Scott, do you guys know each other? You both have a similar problem currently, is losing eyesight. You might want to get together and talk about your
Not muted.
ways
I'm
of
not
coping with this.
I don't know. Which one is Chris? Chris, get on the screen so I can see you.
Chris, it's Chris Stacy, not Chris Jensen. Chris with a C.
Okay. I'm in Northern California, and my problem stems from diabetes. I have trouble with retinopathy. And so I've had several surgeries, but I still can't see out of my left eye, if that helps any.
Yeah, that's very similar to me. I don't have any vision in one eye, and I have at this point very, very little vision in the other eye. I can I can see there's some people there. I can't tell if that's a whole square. I can detect motion,
Got it.
but I can't see individuals very much.
What I usually do to compensate for that is I'm on the floor with a wireless microphone, and I do what I call instant sighting. I'll walk up to a square and I'll sight off of that square, and then I'll walk to another square on the floor, sight off of that square, etc. And I'll do that all night long. That's how I do it. And I walk around the floor doing that.
Yeah, I can't. If they were 6 inches in front of me, I couldn't see them.
Well, I get them 6 inches in front of me. That's what I do. That's how I can see them.
It amazes me or pleases me that both of you got well into calling before you had your sight problems, and that you've been able to continue calling and overcome it. Despite that, I've seen one video that of Chris calling.
Oh, I didn't know anybody was going to be recording that. I don't like that video.
I know.
That's not my best work.
Chris was really upset about it, so he told me. But when I saw him, he was there. If you didn't know he couldn't see, you wouldn't have known it. It just, he's up there performing just like.
Is he a module caller? Are you a module caller, Chris?
No, mental image.
So you use mental imagery. Okay. I use primarily sight calling, but I have used mental imagery only as a subset because I have had to teach it in the past in my caller schools. So I've only learned about that recently, and since Don and I have been talking over the years.
I started out with mental image calling right when Don actually invented it, and then after that I used a lot of written material back in those days, and well, a lot of written material all along because I did a lot of challenge. And
sure, me too.
Yeah, and then I got into sight calling and been sight calling for a long time. And of course, when someone says, "Oh, I'm sight calling," and they've been doing it for a long time, that usually means, in case the new callers don't realize this, that usually means they're doing a lot of different kinds of things. They may have modules, they may be doing mental image, they're probably doing some written stuff. They're not just sight calling. They're doing all kinds of stuff. And of course, then suddenly I find myself back to restricted pretty much to mental image.
I usually tell everybody, I say, I'm the most blind, best sight caller you've ever heard.
Chris, I want to thank you for crediting me with inventing mental image, just another form of alternative facts.
To my knowledge, it's true. You invented it.
Not really. Others parallel develop similar things. I'm finding more and more.
Yeah, but you wrote the book.
And I expanded the versions I wrote and love passing it on.
I know that Don likes to give a huge amount of credit to Jay King, who's one of the people who wrote some stuff before him. And actually, the version of it that I use is actually a version that was formulated by Bill Ackerman after he read Don's book. And I think this was all, and I saw Don's book also actually just before it was published. So I saw the book and I'm like, oh, what's this stuff? And I talked to another guy is Bill Ackerman, who's probably famous for writing the calling program SD,
Right.
which is used by basically all challenge callers.
Right.
And Bill had read that, and he said, "Oh well, I have a slightly different take on it." So it's always fun when I talk to Don, because I say Don's system, and Bill also says Don's system. But the formulation I'm using is just slightly different, and so it's some slight terminology differences. So it's always an interesting challenge to do the translation back and forth. But essentially, I think everybody agrees. Don, I'm sorry, you get the credit. It's your system.
Yep, it is.
No
question.
40 years, I've got the mental part down, but I don't know about the image.
That gives me quite an image, Mel. I just thought I'd throw in a commercial break here, because I've been, as well as selling a book for 35 years, have been taking advantage of these Zoom sessions and spreading the good word. Just finished one class. I see we're down to one person, I think, now that got in this class that just finished. We had a few more on here before. I see some faces here that are in a class that is continuing, and I'll be starting a new class this coming Thursday, and it will be pretty much for very beginners, but we'll have a few people. Eric, I didn't get back to you yet, but Jess, you can monitor. Few people that are quite experienced that will be sitting in on that also. Oh, I'm sorry, I just noticed Hannah and Lars, they're in our current group too. I didn't, missed you.
They
And
around.
I will, this new group starting, I still have a few open slots, people that I've reminded that they were once interested and I haven't heard from. But if you're interested, let me know. Mikhail, yes, we will try to start at 5:15 instead of 5.
Don?
Yes, Mel.
When is your session? I'll make mention of that in mine as well. When there are sessions like Tom Miller's, yours, and a few others, when I do my sessions, I'll make mention of that. So when do you actually do your sessions?
The session that will be starting is Thursdays, 11:15 a.m. Eastern US time. And the next group that will be starting, I can only handle 2 a week, it seems. The next group will be starting at 11 Eastern time on Wednesdays, but it'll be starting in about a month. Some of the people that I expected, if there's any question, we're talking about mental image calling. Carol, did you get the word? Is your email working yet, or how did that work? You're on mute, so I can't tell.
Yes, I emailed you back and said I could only come for that 1 hour, but if you're now doing it at 4:15, then it's a bit pointless, but it's only 3/4 of an hour. So I might be better on the Wednesday.
I'm doing it starting at 1/4 so that Mikhail can get home from work. But
Yeah.
I do have somebody in Japan that would love to have me go a little earlier also. So, I'm going to try for this a little bit later, and we'll see where we go from here. And as they say, another group starting. One option, Carol, is to do the first 3 quarters, because I do tape these and put them up on YouTube on a non-public channel, so you can always go back and refresh what's going on in the last 3/4 of or 1/4 of an hour kind of thing.
Okay.
Let's see, was there?
You're still donbeck.org, are you?
Email is donbeck@donbeck.org, yes. So Oh, Mel, I was going to say something about open advertising. We've got a few slots left, and as they say, in a month, the second one will be going. Yolanda, yes, and I've been wondering why I haven't heard from you.
Did you get my email?
No.
Okay,
Your email
I
is
emailed
all
you back
up
that I
there.
was still interested. Yes.
Oh, great.
About a week ago.
Your
It's
email
Really?
is still all
probably the
see
same. The
that.
email keeps jumping back.
Yes, yeah, I've had a bit of problems with your email. So yeah. It
Well, good,
so it's
good. And
11 a.m., right? At the moment.
well, it's going to be 11:15 so that
Okay.
Mikhail can get back from work.
That's fine. That gives me an extra 15 minutes in the morning. No problem. It's 8 a.m. for me.
Right, you have to get up. Oh, great. Good. I hadn't heard from you and I was wondering why not. Let's see. Any other thoughts? Hang on for 1 second. Or
I just want to highly recommend it. If you haven't seen him do his session on mental imagery, I want to highly recommend it that you listen to what Don has to say and take it for heart, because he has a lot to say on the subject, and he's very good at it.
thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
You blushing yet, Don?
No. It's just the poor lighting that makes me look all flushed like that. What Scott might be talking about is that I do have a video up on YouTube that's open to the public. That's about a 2-hour introduction to what the subject is all about. But what we're doing online now is not just presenting, but trying to train you as to what it is, going further than that, plus taking enough time so most of you get what's going on. And we have gone, so the group that just finished, it was after about 17 lessons. I didn't think I could offer them much more time. But I could offer them time, definitely. I just couldn't offer them much more knowledge. Practice time would have been good, but I didn't want to get started on this new group. But thanks, Scott.
You're welcome.
I'll just throw this question out there just right quick. Is there any possibility that you can maybe record your sessions? Because I don't get out of work till 5 o'clock Eastern time myself. Yeah, I work 8 to 5, so there's no way I could actually attend. I would love to go to one, but there's no way I can do it.
Steve, I saw your comments. I think I responded to it. We've got one other person that is either evenings or weekends also. And I do record them, but I don't think I want people just monitoring them, auditing them, whatever the word is, because we do an awful lot of back and forth stuff. And I'd rather have you in a class, and I'm going to try to figure out how I can do a class that will accommodate more times like that. I can't remember, Steve, who the other one was. Oh, it was John, I think.
Because the weekends I could do any time. It's just a matter of the Monday through Friday thing. I work 8 to 5 Eastern time, so
yeah,
I have to do it during the week.
I'm going to have to talk this over with my wife and my free time in my mind and see if we can squeeze another one in, because I would love to make this available to anybody that's interested. But at this point, I'm not sure. I don't think I want people to do just auditing the videos, at least not for the first 3, 4, 5 sessions. I have had some people start and then continue on getting the tapes because they couldn't continue in person, but I even drop those if I don't get enough feedback that they're actually watching this.
Yeah.
Well, it's just beneficial to have that interaction and be able to ask those questions, because that's where you get your knowledge from, is getting your questions answered.
Exactly.
Janet's a great question asker. Some of them really, most of them I have answers for, but not all. And I'm looking at current students. We've got 1, 2, 3, I guess 3 of you that are with us in current sessions, which is great.
keep forgetting.
Oh, I'm sorry, Hannah. I was counting your screen of you and Lars as one, which is not fair at all. I'm sorry about that. Well, anyway, so much for the.
There are a lot of those. We have the same issue. I hear that a lot in Eastern Europe, Asia, and us. Most of the sessions and all these training sessions for us are always during the middle of the workday. Because I've been asked to call a number of these virtual square dances, but they're always like 10 o'clock Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday morning, or 4 o'clock Thursday afternoon. Well, I'm at work, and a lot of us are in the same boat. So
The session that just finished had 4 or 5 Australians that were willing to stay up later.
Oh, I'm more than willing. You know that. I mean, it's what, 3:51 a.m. right now.
Yeah. In fact, one of them was here and gone. Anyway, so much for the advertisement of that kind of thing. Any other final thoughts on smooth dancing, smooth calling? Smooth calling doesn't sound right, though. It doesn't get it across, but it's really what we do.
Creating smooth dancing.
Right.
Creating smooth dancing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I really like the expression, like the 3 aspects of timing: the lead time, the command time, and the execution time. And understanding those 3 are really, really important to new callers. And there's not enough time, no pun intended, spent on actually understanding that.
Well, as I say, that's a full session on timing, and
Absolutely.
a lot of that has to be done.
Excuse me.
Live with feedback on watching people call and pointing out the mistakes, but taping yourself, especially if you have real dancers, taping your dancers is a great thing to watch. With that, guys, I think we have slowed down enough so that it's a good thing to let Mel get a few hours sleep before his next session.
Well, I'm not actually doing it. It's Steve Turner is delving into the wonderful world of Alaman Left in the session. And then I think the following week, Mike Sikorsky is going to be talking about his activator system.
Interesting.
Following that, we got Chris coming up to smack the back of your wrist when you do something that you shouldn't be doing, and this is why. Right, Chris?
Don't plug it like that.
Actually, Chris, your session is generating a lot of interest, so I'm really looking forward to it, and I expect some good, solid arguments.
I'm looking forward to the written document.
Yes, thank you for reminding me again. Of this one, I assume you're talking not of
No,
Chris.
she's talking about Chris's written document of the unwritten rules.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
I like written documents of any kind.
Noticed that. Anyway, guys, Scott, it's great having you join the group again, or finally.
Thank you.
And hope you will join us again. Mel, I'm very jealous of the fact that you seem to be able to get people lined up ahead of time. I end up not planning ahead that often, but this week I was really glad to get this subject off of my mind, because I've been wanting to let people know about it for a long time.
Well, one of the things when it comes to teaching and getting callers is, I think that every single square dance caller, if they're ever going to start mentoring and lining up callers for teaching, needs to go and spend some time in a synagogue and then visit a few Jewish grandmothers, because you get to learn how to lay a guilt trip very easy. And force them in, right, Chris?
Oy vey.
Does your mother know you're doing this?
No,
I wish she did.
You call to your dances with those lips?
Yeah, what I found on is very much what happens with you. During a session, something will come up that'll generate a lot of discussion. And as what Chris was saying, it was a comment that John Juergens raised, which was a perfectly valid question, but it created a lot of controversial discussion. Chris hit the nail on the head, which was still generating a lot of discussion. And that said, well, Chris, why don't you come and talk to us about this and look at the whole thing? Here's what the definition says, but there's more to it than just the words that are written on the page. And The same with Mike Sikorsky. We were talking about modules, and somebody mentioned doing one thing leads to another. Mike was talking about his activator system. So I said, well, come, people were asking, well, come and present about it. And so he'll be coming up and doing that. Steve was doing a session for me, and they were talking about Alaman lefts and Alaman left positions. That's how this came up. That's what he's talking about today. And as people were asking about SSD, so I got a hold of Jerry. He came and talked about SSD before it became social square dancing and what that was about. And it's usually stuff that comes up in a session is what leads to the next sessions.
Right.
Chris has been promising me to do a session for quite a while now, but he's been sidetracked to do yours.
Oh, sure. Make me feel guilty. Well done.
It's a totally different session, and his is probably more appropriate for your thing anyway. Let's see. And I had one person that I thought had it came up in one of the subject. I asked him to do a session. He thought that'd be great. He watched our next session where the presenter got hammered with questions and complaints, and he said, no, I don't want to subject myself to that. And he went away.
Yeah, we get a few of those. Like I was trying to get Barry up here, Barry Watson. He's our editor for Behind the Mic magazine. He's been calling for a long time. Excellent caller, but the presentations of those one-on-one or doing the school's education, he's more of a work in the background, work with individuals than do the presentations. And there's a lot of callers that are just not comfortable getting up and basically putting themselves with a big dartboard in the middle of their forehead and saying, right, throw away.
I've got a Zoom shield in front of me, so go for it, Anyway, Scott, if you think of anything you want to present for us sometime.
The only thing that I'm pretty much an expert on it, well, actually two things. One is voice. The other one is probably presentation or what's the word I want to use? I can't think of the word.
You present that. You presented that well.
I've done several sessions in Caller Lab with Mike Sikorsky on it. Shoot, I can't think of it. It's
showmanship.
Showmanship. That's the word. So I can probably do one on showmanship. I can do one on voice, that kind of thing. That would help.
It would. It'd be great. Keeping in mind that what we try to do is 10 to 15-minute presentations that are thought stimulating and question stimulating, and then opening it to discussion. That's where we differ from some of the people that just do presentations, and I think people enjoy that as an option.
Am I the only one that caught what Scott did there? The little technique of leading in. I'm not quite sure what the word is. Everybody's curious to draw them in, and then bang, there's the topic. Yeah, good technique, Scott.
Thank you.
Well,
I have sales in my background.
You do remember what Bill Peters said about being an expert, though, right?
I'm an expert.
You remember what Bill Peters said, though, remember?
I do remember what Bill Peters said.
Yeah,
I was
he always said an expert is an X is a has-been and a spurt is a drip under pressure.
Yes. I was always trying to feed you glass.
There you go. He told us we needed to chew glass. Yep.
Right.
So Mel, you caught me getting suckered into Scott's lead up to that. I missed that. I well done. And we could use a talk on presenting as a caller or presenting to callers, but anyway, we should talk about that.
I would love to see some sessions for experienced callers on techniques of mentoring and teaching. It's one of the biggest things that I keep getting asked about is as far as that goes. And one of the things I really like about your sessions as well, as opposed to the class, and mine are geared that way, is you try and look at, for new callers, for experienced callers, and for really experienced callers, it has to hit those three bases of, if you're brand new, here's a technique to start with, here's a foundation. If you're a journeyman caller, here's how you can improve your technique. And if you're a really experienced caller, here's how you can use this session to assist and mentor new callers and take it to that next level when you're presenting. And there's just unfortunately not enough of that with experienced callers knowing how to mentor or how to teach anymore. It's a very, very often ignored topic.
Well, since you're hitting on the mentor thing, to add on to that, it would be nice to add long distance mentoring to that, because I'm in a location where if I had a mentor, it would have to be a long distance mentor. It would not be a local mentor. So
Where are you?
I'm in southern Indiana in the middle of nowhere.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm in Tumut, New South Wales, and our nearest square dance club, I was actually over in Canberra yesterday, and that's 2.5 hours away. That's where the nearest square dancer is.
Yeah, I'm in Sacramento, California. So I'm kind of like the hub of California.
But I did put down, there are a lot of callers, like Don is doing his mental image workshops. Tom Miller is doing a lot of one-on-one sessions. I think he charges something like $10 an hour. There's
Right.
a lot of callers. There's a few European callers. There's a few other callers that are doing these one-on-one sessions,
Right.
And settling it down. And there are, I cannot stress the advantage that you're getting if you get a hold of somebody that is going to spend the time. It's well worth $10. And when you think about it, if you get a 2 or 3 hour session on one topic that you can nail down, as opposed to a 15-minute presentation or a 20-minute presentation in a caller school, 20 callers asking questions, moving on to the next topic, you can spend $10 and get an hour and a half or 2 hours on one topic and really digest it. And if you want to have more, have another session. This is an advantage in calling, teaching, and mentoring that just has never been there before.
Yeah.
Well,
I agree.
now you tell me that it's worth $10 per session. Here, I have always figured you get what you pay for. So people like Janet that are in my current session aren't getting anything because they aren't paying anything, right?
No, and like I said, I've been doing these online now for about 4 years. I've got about, I think, a dozen callers, some in Japan, some in New Zealand, some in the States, a few in Canada. It's never really come to the fore. We were using Skype or Facebook Messenger and never even thought about Zoom. It really, really does help a lot for a lot of new people. And it also helps a lot for experienced callers, especially when we started doing the exercises, whether on Facebook. I found that a lot of new callers have phenomenal minds for choreography, or curious minds, and come up with some really, really interesting stuff that I may have known or may have thought 25, 30 years ago, but completely forgot about it. And watching that it's new to them discovery is so refreshing. John Juergens is one of those callers that I talk about.
Can the dancers actually do it?
Oh yeah, no, this is what I'm talking about. He's one of those callers that I talk about. He doesn't call. He's never been behind a mic. He's never really picked up a microphone. He's interested in it mainly for the mental exercise, and he wants to be a caller. He's a dancer. He's gone all over. But some of the stuff he comes up with is absolutely brilliant, smooth, and phenomenal. When it hits bang on. Other stuff is curiosity questions, and he'll ask a question like, is pass through lead to the right Ferris wheel? Heads pass through lead to the right Ferris wheel. Is that fine? Well, the dancers will do it, yes, but this is why, as a mentor, to actually have to step back and explain why you would not want to call that is something that we don't often think about when we're teaching new callers.
Right.
And
that's
to
true.
Have him ask that question says, wait a minute, I should be explaining this rather than thinking this is common knowledge. It's not common knowledge.
No.
It's not until somebody like John asks it that we realize that again.
The problem with that, heads pass through lead to the right, is the dancers don't know where they want to end up. They don't know where they're supposed to end up.
I know, we had about a 2-hour discussion on that particular thing.
They're out in the middle of outer space and have no concept of where to go from there. And so they kind of look back at the caller and go, okay, where do I go from here? Yeah. But if you just said heads lead right, they could do that.
We've, over the years, especially at Call Lab, had many conversations that repeat over and over again when there are different callers' opinions. Fortunately, this is particular forum or Zoom session is one that I get to MC. So I'm going to say, let's not discuss that problem here.
No.
Chris is going to discuss it in Australia in about 3 weeks. I mentioned you get what you pay for. I want to withdraw that. The sessions I've been doing on mental image, I've really enjoyed sharing the information I have with people, and want to continue doing that. It's a subject that I know a lot about, a lot of subjects, as most Caller Lab accredited caller coaches do, and which I was for quite a while. But this is one that I seem to have taken the ball and run with it a little further than many in this direction. It's not the most needed direction, but it's a very interesting one, and I love sharing the information. And the bigger base that people know about it, the better, the happier.
I think one of the best comments that came out of your sessions, Don, and I'm still trying to remember who it was, said, "Why don't they teach this before they teach site calling? Because it'll really help." And I thought, what a perfect comment.
Wish I had a better answer for it.
The answer is it's too complicated.
Well,
site calling is a lot easier than mental imagery.
No, I think the problem is because site calling is forced upon us as opposed to actually learning a technique that you have to unlearn, and people don't like unlearning.
Scott, I like to tell people that site calling, that mental image calling is fairly hard to learn, but very easy to use once you know it. And it's worth the effort to do it. And I think site calling is a great end goal, but it's much easier to acquire and be good at if you have the basic fundamentals of mental image. Carol, were you going to say something?
I don't think I had to unlearn site calling. I didn't. I just, of course, it was your book that I learned from. I couldn't learn from anything else except for you at Caller Lab. But yeah, it's for me, I didn't unlearn anything. It was more information.
I've always said it's easier for beginner callers to learn because they don't have to unlearn. They don't have a fallback. It's something for them to grab onto. And I'm really looking forward to this new group starting, because it will have some, I've learned here from seeing some of the things in our earlier exercises, what the additional challenges are of the first steps of it. And I'm looking forward to going with that.
Sure.
Well,
I was just quiet for a second to see what would happen. Many years ago, a caller who's since passed away by the name of Ed Ross Smith, when I asked him how long should a break be if you don't have round dances timing it for you, but between tips, and he said it varies over the evening. What you do is you listen for a silence. You'll hear that silence, and at that point it's time, the break is over. Conversations will automatically stop, and it's time to move on. And I've tuned myself over the years to hear that silence. It's imagine you can be talking to somebody and all of a sudden you just hear the background noise go hush. And I just heard that on this session. So I'm going to leave and say, you guys should go get a life too.
I'm going to stop recording now, and I'll leave the room open for as long as people are here, but I'm going to wander off too. Later.
Okay.
Bye. Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
I think I'm going to wander off.
Well.